Hey ladies and gents, welcome to my review of eFootball 2023 version 2.2. This is the best the game has been since version 1, but there's some new mechanics that I don't really like and agree with, and it's still far away from any recent PES games in terms of gameplay and content. I've now had a good chance to share my reviews after a ton of online and offline gameplay. There's new events, but sadly poorly laid out and could have been so much better. They could have added proper tables and a World Cup mode, but it's so hollow. It's such a hollow event of win matches and score goals, and that's pretty much it. The only added bonus is the team filter of being under 2,100, but somehow I faced an opponent with a team greater than 2,100 on that event. Filters are a much welcome addition, which I've been asking for the longest time possible. There is a new match pass system, but even at half price, it doesn't appear worth it. And I recommend saving your coins for Player of the Week packs, even though you can recoup some of those coins back by playing often with the match pass. There are new packs, but I struggle to call this content as it's mostly rehashed players that we've already acquired, but slightly different in terms of stats or player skills. Maybe with a slightly different looking card, which is not worth the price of admission if you ask me. Wembley Stadium does look amazing, but don't expect to see it online because you can only play in the Konami Stadium with the national teams, even as England. Now let's focus on the gameplay side of things and just take a look at what's improved and what's got worse. Physical battles are much improved now that the shoulder barge has been nerfed, meaning you can hold off players without that feeling that you're going to get knocked off the ball easily. Shielding does feel a little bit overpowered, holding off strong defenders even with the weakest of players, and they look like they get pushed back by some sort of force field. First touch has improved, but it's still not perfect. Players take unnecessarily heavy touches, especially in defense with high ball control stats. First touches around the penalty box are very annoying, where they've added a mechanic when taking a touch towards the penalty area from outside the box. Often your player is going to take a very heavy touch regardless of player stats or skills, even if you release the sprint button. Low through balls are still way too assisted in my opinion, being placed by artificial intelligence, meaning even if you're trying to cut out the passing lanes, it's almost pointless. You're better off just running back towards goal because this mechanic is something they've copied from FIFA and it needs to be banished, where the ball will always evade your player no matter how hard you try to cut the angle. No change to high through balls. And in terms of the passing itself, the passing speed has been increased, and this is one of the biggest things you'll probably notice when you first play the game. It's much slicker, perhaps too slick and a little bit too ping pong in my opinion, and first time passes are way too accurate, even with players without the first time pass skill or one touch pass skill. New passing animations have been added, which adds far greater fluidity to the game, and it feels really nice, but I just think they need to tone it down just a fraction in terms of how accurate these passes are, even with players with low passing stats. It's almost like I want to reconfigure my players because I no longer need 90 for passing. I think 80 will pretty much hit most of your passes, as from what I can tell anyway. I mean, I played with Japan and I was like playing like prime Barcelona. Lofted pass speed has also been increased as well, and this is a problem for me, where they've been increasing the pass speed and the lofted pass speed and the through ball pass speed. This has pretty much nullified the use to use stunning through balls, passes and lofted passes. I mean, why would you use a stunning pass anymore now that the pass speed has been increased by that much more? Stunning crosses, however, are still one of the most effective ways to score, and they are still very, very useful. But all the other types of passes, to be honest, you can just abandon the stunning through balls, the stunning passes, the stunning lofted passes, because there's no need. You don't get any sort of big benefit now because they've increased the pass speed of the normal passes. And this for me clearly shows a change in the direction for Konami, opting against following their vision of a far more realistic approach to basically reverting to similar to PES 21 gameplay, where 1-2 spam down the middle is common and it works far more frequently than it did in the HQ build version that I played. However, it's not all bad news around the stunning kick variety. Stunning shots have much improved, look and feel way better. There's a real good or satisfying feeling when one hits the back of the net because The amount of power and velocity, they seem to have increased that, and they've also increased the sort of accuracy of these shots, making them a far more viable way to score. And they've also increased the dipping and rising shots, making them more accurate. So in my opinion, stunning shots in general are definitely worth attempting now. I've also definitely noticed an increased shooting variety for all shot types, whether that's chip shots or long range curlers, close range curlers, power blast from close range, whatever it is. There's a far greater variety in terms of the way the player kicks the ball, and also the ball trajectory, whether it's going to spin off of the outside of his foot, whether it's going to bend away, bend inwards. There's just a lot more variety, and giving you a far greater sort of satisfaction when you do score a goal now. As I mentioned earlier, the pass speed has increased, but I also think the shot power has increased as well. And they've also added a new dink chip shot into eFootball 2023. It was in the older versions of PES, but it's now being added to eFootball in this latest update. And I have got a tutorial on the channel on how to do that new shot type. And I would say that the chance to score from close range is much improved, as are open goals as well. But I still do miss some sitters, so it's not, it's not flawless, but you will still miss the odd chance. But generally, on the whole, you tend to score more often than certainly previous versions of eFootball 2023. Dribbling with the left stick without sprinting has much improved, but still doesn't feel good enough to combat the sort of defenders who magnetize to you and the ball. I feel like players need to be a little bit more responsive in terms of turning, just to give added balance between that attacking and defending. But I'm going to touch on more on this a little bit later with the attack and defense strategy. But dribbling at high speed, whilst improved, still feels too stiff and rigid, and nowhere near version 1. It doesn't feel like you can exit out very easily from a certain direction that you're running. And I have to say that AI used some brilliant dribbling techniques now that looks very natural, and pull off skills far more frequently, which gives and provides the illusion of player ID. But I'm going to cover more on the player ID a little bit later on in this video. But it's probably the best it's been since PES 2018. I mean, just look at these clips here from Messi and Lautaro Martinez from my live stream. However, on the downside, I would say the AI and their skill reading has much improved, which isn't great in my opinion, especially inside the penalty box. It feels like they're reading my skill inputs, what I'm putting into the controller, rather than what's happening on the screen when the skill is performed. So what you'll see is the sort of defender position himself already before the action's actually taken place on screen. Now that the shoulder barge has been nerfed, which often results in a foul now unless you're side by side with your opponent, I find that standing tackles and matchup are the best form of defense, but I would still lean mostly towards the matchup button once your player is in between the player sprinting with the ball. The team press appears to be fixed again, closing down the right player with the secondary indicated player when R1 is pressed. And defending in general has improved, but still feels way too automated and easy in my opinion. In comparison to how stiff the dribbling feels, players moving without the ball, it feels too loose and fluid, meaning it's very, very easy to hone in and tackle the player with the ball, whereas when you're the player with the ball, it feels very difficult to move and turn. However, when it comes to interceptions, these are a little bit more random, because I can't even count the amount of times where the ball has gone through or between my legs on a player who's got blocker, interception and matchup held down perfectly when I'm not sprinting. One other aspect that has improved is defending corners. The defending team now appear to benefit from an improved chance to clear the ball, whereas previously it sort of benefited the attacking side. Player selection seems much improved, but still isn't perfect, as players fail to be selected quickly enough in some instances, although there is a new cursor change option which I need to test more thoroughly. Goalkeepers are much improved and appear to be more human-like, but still need a lot of work. Shots that regularly went in from certain shooting spots can now be saved. However, for one-on-ones, the goalkeeper will remain on the line. This is fine for online play, as you get to choose when your goalkeeper comes off the line, but is absolutely ridiculous when playing offline and you're bearing down on goal only to tap the ball in from 6 yards because the goalkeeper refuses to move from his line. See my new shot type tutorial for good examples of this, where the goalkeeper is just sitting inside the 6-yard box and it's just absolutely ridiculous. General movement with the ball feels good and players still feel weighty, and the same can be said when you sprint without the ball and the time it takes the player to come to a stop feels realistic. Player positioning and off the ball movement feels much better than the last version, as players no longer decelerate unnecessarily when performing a dynamic 1-2, but I still have issues with the player positioning when the attack and defense strategy is set to attacking, with too many players too far forward and very unnatural positioning, and with the lack of responsiveness it doesn't bode well for the game as opponents struggle to escape their own penalty box. Just watch this clip to see what I mean. I am playing a 4-5-1. Just look at how my opponent is struggling to get out of his penalty box due to the poor first touch. Fullbacks overlap more naturally now on the possession-based playstyle without colliding with the wide player as often as they once did. Player reaction time to loose balls is generally pretty good, but there are times where the nearest player to the ball isn't selected, and whilst player freezing from a deflection or interception is still in the game, which is a massive bugbear of mine, the improved reaction times of the overall players help hide this, making it far less jarring. However, recovery times for interceptions can appear a little bit too quick in this latest version, allowing the player who passed the ball to get to the ball before the player who made the interception completes their animation. One solution would be to lessen the reaction time of the passer with the ball reacting to that interception. Collisions have also improved. No longer do players fall and fly all over the place at the slightest of touches. Now it feels like it's the best it's been in the series. Ball physics have much improved in every aspect and is one of the biggest and most noticeable changes. Previously far too many straight line passes, crosses and shots. Now passes, crosses and shots have then added curl most times, adding far greater realism. And whilst the AI do a great job of utilising the skills as I mentioned earlier, gives that illusion that I said about adding player ID, it is still severely lacking. Player ID is a massive loss. Kimura came out in an interview last year saying that Konami was no longer going to be focusing on player ID, which is a massive blow, which is one of the reasons and aspects of the series that really stood out to me in the past. This has to be taken seriously because the majority of the players pass, move, shoot and cross the ball with exactly the same animations for their arms and legs, even though they're clearly added more animations as I mentioned before. Referees are much improved and almost back to PES 2021 levels, which equates to still not being great, but offering a much less frustrating experience when it comes to being knocked off the ball or completely wiped out with any fouls being called. There are still times that happens, but the majority are now called fairly, and it definitely helps that your players do try to stay on their own 2 feet. The graphics appear to have received a minor boost as the turf looks a little less radioactive, but it's nowhere near the levels of a modded PES 2021 or FIFA 23 for that matter. The general menu user interface appears to be much quicker to navigate and load images instantly, so you're not just left with a grey blob on your screen. So to quickly summarise, the most noticeable differences are the increased pass speed, the general ball physics and improved collisions where players do a better job of staying on their feet, numerous more animations to help increase the fluidity of the game, adding a new shot type and far more variety outcome when it comes to shooting, passing and crossing the ball. 2.2 is a huge update and full of improvements, but still a little way off version 1 in my opinion. You know, version 1 wasn't perfect either. We're not talking about the levels of PES 21, 2019, 2018 standards, but I can honestly see this being one of the best football games ever in a few years. But they have to bring back the player ID. I keep getting asked how close is this build to the HQ version that I played, and it's so far away from that vision and closer to PES 21 in terms of gameplay. It's just such a shame because 1-2 spam down the middle wasn't a thing and defending was far more manual, perhaps a little bit too manual, and for casual players would really struggle to adapt and probably end up diverting to FIFA. So from a business point of view, it makes more sense to dumb down the controls, and especially with the merge of console and mobile players. That's obviously got to come into account when it comes to sort of magnetism to the ball and all this stuff. Still, version 2.2 puts eFootball 2023 in a much better place, but in all honesty, I'm not ready to fully commit because I see FIFA 23 being a slightly superior and less frustrating experience in its current state due to a couple of annoyances and the lack of a Master League in eFootball. I'll quickly summarise some of the gripes I have with this game that they need to focus on for the next patch. They need to improve the reaction for players not selected that are close to loose balls. Just watch Grealish, who should react and move towards the ball even though I haven't selected him. And then sometimes there is no reaction to pass or shoot button inputs. Happens online and offline, so it's not a lag issue and has plagued one of the previous eFootball 2022 builds. And they also need to reduce the frequency of heavy first touches when breaking into the penalty box regardless of player skill. And finally, goalkeepers staying on their line on one-on-one scenarios needs to be sorted out, especially for the offline gameplay. I just want to run through a few more instances where your players just don't react. Look at number 9 here. After the goalkeeper makes a save, he just doesn't react. He goes off in a different direction and I literally have to select him and drag him across. But he should be running onto that and putting that into the back of the net. Here's another one. The ball comes into my striker. I take a shot. It deflects. That's fine. But why doesn't he go for the ball there? It selects the guy behind him, like behind the defender. Like, why would it do that? Again, another long shot taken from outside the box. The goalkeeper parries it. The defender's not selected. The defender's not selected. It selects this defender on the penalty spot. Then I have to manually change to this player. I mean, that could have resulted in a goal. And one more example of a keeper making the save, and for whatever reason, like, the player selection is hideous. Now, they have made some changes to the cursor, like I said, but they should be reacting to this, but they're not, and it's really, really poor. Let me know what you think about version 2.2 in the comments. What do you like and dislike about it? Has it drawn you back in to give it a try? What do you think about the new events and graphics? I look forward to hearing from you guys. Anyway, that's all from me from this review of version 2.2 of eFootball 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care and bye bye.